Going? Okay. Back at it. Post-game comments on Baylor were accurate. So unless somebody has any further questions, there wasn't anything that I had commented on after the game that wasn't accurate. So came back to work last night as always and are working on Texas, and very similar to what we see in the past. A lot of big guys up front that are strong and can certainly hold their own a little bit in their gap and speed on the perimeter. I don't think it's any secret they've gone to the style of offense that a lot of teams are going to. So it'll be 2 weeks in a row that we've seen that style of offense. The young quarterback seems to be throwing the ball really well and accurate, pretty good fit for him. And then big guy that they've had the last few years has come in and done a really good job for him in certain situations. So like every other week, we need a good week of practice, and our team's frame of mind was really good and had a good practice last night. So a lot of game planning today and tomorrow morning, and get back to it tomorrow afternoon with the team.
Mike, what are your impressions been of Shane Buechele, quarterback for them?
I mean, good player. I mean, seems to fit the system that they're trying to execute. Very accurate and mobile enough, arm strong. Throws the ball like a baseball player.
Coach, what crosses your mind when you see what happens with Les Miles, where he goes from thinking he won a game to losing a game to losing his job in that short of a period of time?
Well, I would think there were a lot of emotions. I was sad for Coach Miles. He's a very good football coach, and I can only imagine the emotion. He cares a lot about the game. I'm not sure how old he is now, probably in his early 60s, but I know that he was still very youthful and energetic in his practices with his team, and so in our profession, it's difficult. We're always concerned for each other in those situations. From what I understand, he had the best winning percentage in the history of the school, including Coach Saban. But at some point, Barry Trammell asked me this morning on my Big 12 call, and I had taken a quote from Mike Leach, and that if you stay at one place long enough, eventually they're probably going to fire you. And he may be a good example of what's happened down at LSU. I'm sure that he feels like they wish they would have played better in a couple games and maybe a couple last year. But overall, he had a pretty good run there for what he accomplished, and hate to see it end that way for him.
Coach Gundy, Coach Yurcik and Coach Spencer both talked about how physical Texas was. Has that impressed you?
They've been this way every year. Years they've won a lot of football games, and I'm going to go all the way back to when Coach Brown was there. The personnel for them doesn't really change much. They very seldom play with undersized players at any position. They're 300 and so pounds, and they move well, and that's the situation that we're facing, or the team we're facing this week.
They've got a couple running backs who are 200-plus-pound guys who also have a lot of speed and a running quarterback in swoops. How do you kind of try to manage that and defend that?
Well, you have to account for him when he's in the game, and I would venture to guess that they have packages where he shows a run and jumps up and throws it and passes it. They hadn't really got to it a lot, but they've had physical backs. I mean, it's not anything new for them with where they're at. Warren is a guy that we were in till the end with. We felt like we had a chance to get him, and he's grown up to be exactly what we thought he would be. So a very similar team to what they've had over the last 8 to 10 years.
Swoops are the shades of what you guys did with JW, you think, last year in terms of how they use them?
Same concept, in my opinion, outsider looking in.
Coach, how has James Washington handled the extra coverage he's received this year?
He's doing good. Baylor had a plan for him. Obviously Coach Bennett had watched the tape and been around a long time and understood that his ability, and they tracked him throughout the game. There was time underneath players turn their back on the football and chase him, and So he's going to start to see some coverages. If so, we have to be able to run the football.
Mike, if you could talk a little bit about the challenge of Texas defensively, in that they change fairly significantly by the opponent, or they have so far this year. Plus, they've had an open week now and even talked about making changes, and Charlie Strong hinted it this morning on the conference call because they weren't happy with their defense. So you look into a crystal ball. How do you prepare for a team you're not sure what they're going to do?
Well, we have schemes that we feel like, if executed properly, should be successful on a 3-down defense. And there's variations one way or the other, but I don't see them shelving one plan and going to a 4-down. And that's just my thought. They're going to close the middle of the field a lot, and they want to blitz and bring zone pressures, and so we could see a considerable change, but I would say it would be a small change and more similar to what they've done in the past.
During your career, both as a player and coach, you've seen a lot of dynamic defenders. Malik Jefferson for them is one of those really extreme playmakers on that side of the ball, isn't he?
Sure. He's lived up to being a 5-star player. I think he was a 5-star player. I'm not sure. But he's, in our opinion, as when we evaluate high school players, he's a first-round pick, and he's lived up to that. We've faced several guys over the years they've had that are like that, and he's certainly a very good football player. But you got to find a way to block him, and you got to find a way to get him moving different directions.
Now that you've seen him in a few games, what do you think Larry Williams and Marcus Keys have sort of brought to this offensive line since becoming starters?
Well, they've improved a little bit since we first started to play them. They have a long ways to go. They make mistakes that first-year players make, but they've given us a little shot in the arm at times. But we have to continue to work the plays that we think give us the best chance to move the ball on the ground against the opponent we're playing this week, and they have to improve in their technique. There's a number of plays where we're not very good fundamentally. Some of that is young players or early players that are early in their career, I should say. They get better as it goes on. But their effort and their willingness to want to be good players has helped our team.
Where are you seeing improvement on the offensive line, Mike?
Well, we turned fewer guys loose last week at Baylor than we did in 2 years. We had guys covered up.
The result of the adjustments you made against Baylor, or do you think that'll carry over? Wherever you stand on the offensive line, do you think it'll carry over week to week to week?
Improvement? Should. The more reps and the number of times that we run the same plays. I mean, there's only so many schemes you can run in a game offensively, run block wise. You can run outside zone, inside zone. You can pull one guy or pull two guys or run a draw. It pretty much wraps it up. And so the more that we can improve on the areas that we think give us the best chance each week, they should get better.
Even some of the guys that don't get mentioned a lot, Crabtree doesn't get mentioned a whole lot, and I'm going to assume some of it's because he does a pretty decent job. Mm-hmm. He had the hook block on Justice's 48-yard around the edge. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about how good a job he did in establishing that edge for Justice.
He had several plays where he was really good, but he needs to learn to finish his blocks. He's on the right guy, and he's getting into his fourth and his fifth step, and he's not finishing his blocks like the first play of the game. He needs to learn to finish his block. That'll make us a much better team. But from an assignment standpoint, he's going to be high, way up there in the 90s.
About Justice Hill, your comments after the game on his 2 turnovers, his 2 fumbles, were played up a lot in the papers and in the media. But at the same time, you know him better than we do. How did he handle this? Because I'm going to assume he's in that category, like a Dylan Stoner with the penalties against Pitt. It means a lot to him.
Well, you'll have to give me the Cliff Notes version. I was a big Cliff Notes guy in college on what happened in the paper and the media, because I watched SpongeBob instead.
it's just what you said. It's, okay, he had a good game, but we can't take the turnovers. I mean, you were pretty blunt about not turning the ball over, but
Well, it's pretty easy to tell what happened. And I understand he's a true freshman, and we want him carrying the ball. And the first fumble he had, I have to give credit to Baylor's defender because he was in there deep and reached hard and pulled and was very good in whatever they've coached him to do, just like what number 40's done for us. And the second time, he's fighting for extra yards. And so those are learning experiences for him. But my comments after the game were because I was upset for our team, coaches and players, because we were in a position to win the game. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but when you turn the ball over multiple times in critical points on the field and you give up big plays on defense, we gave up 9 against Pitt and we gave up 10 against Baylor. It's very difficult to win. You have to have a much superior athletic team. Well, Oklahoma State's not been in that position very much. So what happens is you lose. And I'm a big Justice Hill fan, but he has to take care of the football. They don't stop and say, you're a true freshman, we're going to give you that one back. They all count. So he understands that. He's a very intelligent young man, comes from a very good home. He's been raised the right way, and so constructive criticism is not something he's going to shy away from.
So did you try Justice as your number one tailback, or is he your number one tailback?
Did we try?
Yeah, I mean, you gave him that opportunity the other night. You started the game. I mean, is he
Sure.
started moving forward?
Well, I think that he made enough plays for us to justify letting him carry the ball. He stays fresh throughout the game. So if you're asking me because he fumbled, what are we going to do? We're going to give him the ball and make him run again.
Jalen Mccluskey's second leading receptions guy for you right now. Is this the role you hoped that he would have at this point in the year to be a reliable option in the passing game, replacing Glidden?
And when 28 gets double covered, for lack of a better term, then 1 and 81 and 17, those guys have to become a factor. We also need to involve our Cowboy backs more. The teams that we're playing and the way they're playing us haven't really allowed us to use them as much. We did more in this game than we did the game before. Those guys have to make plays. Again, it becomes a numbers game. If there's 2 people on one guy, then the other guys are getting single coverage. Same thing that happens a lot down here in Dallas with Dez. They double up on him, so the other guys have to make plays.
With Mccluskey's size, have you been impressed with his durability so far? I mean, it's only 4 games in, but you can always kind of wonder with a guy that small how he's going to fare getting up from big hits.
He seems to be doing fine. You know, he's been that way all his life. He's very agile. You know, he moves side to side really well. And so far, he's done well.
Any update on Marcel?
He gets October 1st, I think, is what I said, and so he's got 5 days, 6 days, whatever it is, and then they'll scan his foot or ankle, wherever he's got an issue. They'll scan it again, go from there.
So you don't expect there's a chance he'll be able to play Saturday?
No.
Okay.
You kind of talked about the 2-quarterback system already. What makes that work, and why is it working for them, Texas?
Well, the freshman quarterback seems to be a good player. He understands the system, and then the swoops brings another dimension to the table, and so I'm guessing they feel like that in certain circumstances he gives them the best chance to be successful. That's why we used 2 players last year, and I think it's a great scheme. I wish that we had it and they didn't.
But the last time Justice Hill got meaningful carries, well, before the season, I mean, he was like running against guys from Sand Springs. And
Which they were pretty good last year,
well,
though.
that's right.
They weren't as good as Midwest City, but they had hell of a game.
It's just a hard lesson to learn for a freshman that guys at this level are a lot stronger and more aggressive at trying to strip the football. And they're not going to quit until the whistle blows.
The 2 jumps for a football player when you're an 8th grader and you go to being a freshman in high school, and then when you're a senior and you go to be a freshman in college, it's a considerable speed, size, and strength difference. And unfortunately, sometimes the only way you learn is what he went through. And those comments after the game, in a sense, were directed at him, but not really directed at him. It was everybody. The quarterback put the ball on the ground too. So because he was the one that fumbled the most, and it showed up because it was on the 2-yard line, but that's to everybody on our team. If we don't take care of the football and we continue to give up huge chunk plays, then on Sundays we're all going to be sad. That's just my history with the game. So he has to learn, and we coach it, we drill it, and we teach it. But unfortunately, sometimes in life, we don't learn things until we go through it and make mistakes.
How much of your success running the ball against Baylor, yards-wise, had to do with you guys focusing more on inside runs and outside runs?
Like most teams, we have a plan for both, and then a lot of what we do is dictated by the defense, how they're going to play. Baylor is a lot of movement up front with their down guys. Sometimes they'll jump 2 gaps, and that allowed us to run the ball inside more than what we traditionally have, because when there's a lot of movement on your front, then that means you're not coming at us, you're going sideways, and so you can push and move guys better. Advantage is you may jump in a gap that the offense is not prepared for. Disadvantage is you may get pushed out of the play. So we weren't sure how much movement we would get, but we got a lot of movement. So that pushed us back into more inside run.
Given Texas' usual size of defense, will it make the inside runs a lot more difficult to have to go back to doing more outside stuff?
Texas plays an odd front where they have a nose guard. They usually line up over the center, and then they play their tackles in 4 eyes and 5 techniques, where one's inside or he's outside. And if they're inside, most teams are going to try to go outside. If they're outside, you got to be able to run inside. So I'm not sure how Vance will feel that he needs to attack us, but we have to make that adjustment during the game.
Did you like the toughness Mason showed on his runs? Or I'm sure you.
I thought he had his best game pulling the ball down and scrambling for positive yards in crucial situations. Now, he played pretty well overall. He missed a couple throws, and I think he had maybe 2 reads that could have gone the other way, which is fairly common in a 100-and-something play game. But where I think that he really stepped up was in his ability to pull the ball down and fight for extra yards. That's where he helped us in this game, or that game, I should say.
You're the only coach ever to win 4 times in a row in Austin, but you haven't beaten them here.
I didn't know that until you just now told me.
It's been a unique series. I mean, I think the last 7 in a row, road team won the game. But I know you don't actually get out and play, but I mean, in your preparation, does that drive you even more than typical to beat them here at home?
I was unaware of that. Didn't we travel down there twice in a row one time? Yeah, and then we were ahead of them here a couple of times. And Vince Young took the game over in the second half 3 times. Thanks for telling me. So we've actually, overall, we've played fairly well against them. A couple years ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago, we didn't play good. Where was Dax quarterbacking? I mean, he had no chance. He should have filed a lawsuit against us after the game for assault on ourselves. So I think our players enjoy playing in this game. I don't think there's enough I don't think they have a chip on their shoulder like, I want to get Texas, but I would say, I'm going to use this for the first time. They put this up here for me, and I've never used it because I think they think I'm going to forget who our own team is. But if you went through this roster, maybe 1 or 2 guys that they recruited, maybe. I would have to go through it, but maybe not anybody. I'm not sure. So I think some of them would, like to play in this game for that reason.
have you defensively, with what's going on defensively the last 6 games, have you kind of graduated from being frustrated about it to being a little angry about it?
You know, here, let me give you the positives of the last game. We played our best game on special teams, and we used some guys on special teams that hadn't played very much in college football, and we wanted to spread the legs out so we didn't get fatigued, and it worked for us. So that plan was really good in our opinion. We ran the football effectively on offense. We stayed fairly balanced, but we turned the ball over. And defensively, we stopped the run. Last year, we couldn't stop the run, and it's the two ways that most coaches, including myself, get frustrated is when you can't stop the other team from running the ball because it just wears on you. And then the second thing is when you give up the big plays. So what you're saying, I agree with, but the positive is we at least did a better job slowing down the run against them. The negative of it was our safeties were so involved, we're isolated in man coverage on the corners. And they're good on the perimeter. They're good at what they do. And when that quarterback is throwing the ball as accurate as he was in that game on those deep throws, there's 3 of them. 2 of them, unfortunately, I had a really good view of. And when their guy started to stutter, before he even came out of their route on the second part of it, the ball was already in the air. And I've not seen many guys that could do that. Whedon could do it a little, and Josh Fields could do it whenever he wanted. Those are the only 2 guys I've ever been around that can let go of the ball that early on double moves and then hit a guy right in stride. And we don't like it. We're not going to accept it. We're going to coach it and get better. But I am giving them a little credit for their ability to throw the deep ball.
Would you agree that Mason is at least Whedon's equal on the deep out?
Sure. He's very good at it. Very good, sure.
He might convert on a higher percentage of those than any college guy I've ever seen.
If you just go off percentages, the only guy that's probably better than him played in the late 80s. Other than that, he's pretty good at it. That was the only guy.
Even on the 3rd and 18 deep out.
Very nice. He throws a nice ball out there. You're right. Good? All right, thanks.